Hiya, I'm a Zamen, and time travel. Time travel. It's a cool concept that's been done quite a lot in media. Avengers did it, Dragon Ball did it, a hot tub did it. And while now it's getting kind of overshadowed by multiverses, I still love time travel when it's not overly complicated. And I think my dungeon master, Nick, I think he did a great job in his D&D medieval era zombie apocalypse game, where towards the end of it we had a whole time travel arc. Allow me to explain. The basic setting is that there's been this ongoing zombie apocalypse plaguing the entire country of Aryan Road because of an evil necromancer known only as the Mistress. She's turned most of the populace of Aryan Road into zombies by using these black clouds that transmit the plague. Biting also does it too, but clouds are deadlier. Trust me, they are hiding switchblades. To oppose the ambitions of the Mistress was us, the players, in our party of 6. I played the cleric of the party, Sleuth, who also happened to look just like the Soma Cruz from Castlevania. Our group's leader was the barbarian, Bert, the long-lost heir to the throne of Aryan Road. But that's a much longer story that involves basically the Venom symbiote from Marvel. It's for another time, okay? There was also a ranger named Div, a monk named Shen, a druid named Aridin, and Connor, our warlock. With that exposition blurb out of the way, allow this survivor of Razorback Peak to tell you a tale. Presently, the party along with our loyal army was traversing the desert trying to get somewhere to stop the apocalypse. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, we had come to a crossroad and decided to follow the trail east instead of west. Along the East Trail, the party encountered a woman in need who claimed that there were people trapped inside a temple that was being besieged by the undead. Naturally, us being the protagonists we were, who can all fly at this point. Oh yeah, I should mention that by this point in the campaign, the entire party was level 17. We started at level 3. Campaign ended at level 20. It's a bit of a long-running adventure. Anyway, most of us could fly, so we all went off to the temple with the Mistress in tow, while ditching the rest of our army because, well, they would slow us down. We arrived at this desert temple that was just surrounded by the undead with its doors wide open. We might be too late, each of us thought. So we threw ourselves into the fray. The woman we met earlier followed behind us, cutting through the horde. Once we broke through the perimeter and entered the temple, we heard screaming coming from the central chamber, where there sat a fallen suit of massive armor and a sphinx statue, along with multiple undead. Naturally, we assumed that this meant the temple's last defense had fallen. We rushed in to save as many people as we could, only for the doors to slam behind us shut. Dark magic began to surround the temple walls, and the woman who led us here unveiled herself, throwing off the desert shroud she had worn, revealing herself to be the Mistress, the source of the undead. But that wasn't all, because the giant heavy armor began to stir and rise, revealing that it was no ordinary suit. Instead, it was Argon the Iron, the former super soldier king of Aryan Road who had been revived as the Mistress's left hand. Meanwhile, that Sphinx was just kinda chillin' and spitting out sand, basically creating this sand-filled kiddie pool. We didn't know it was an enemy yet. Still, right here, in this moment, the party was confronted by the literal main antagonist of the entire campaign, with seemingly no escape. So we fought. We faced them head-on, and actually put up a decent fight. Until everything started going wrong. Argon the Iron punted our druid Aridin, and chokeslammed the warlock Connor into the kiddie pool of sand, disintegrating them, horrifying the party. After them, I was next. As the cleric, I was a prime target, so my boy Sleuth got impaled and chucked into the sandy kiddie pool. But before I was pulled under, I had the chance to roll for divine intervention. If you don't know that much about D&D 5e, clerics can call their god for some help. To do this, you have to roll a d100 and roll below your level. 17 in this case, so still not great odds. But Sleuth's god was Cord, the god of thunder, courage, and fishing. So Sleuth casted his lot and waited for a response. He got one, getting filled with newfound power, flight speed doubling, thunder crackling off his body, newfound strength surging through him. Then he got spell-slapped by the mistress, rolled several bad strengths, and fell into the sandy kiddie pool. While this was going on, Shen, our monk boy, concocted a devious plan and tried to push it into action. By grappling with Argon and trying to throw him into the sandy kiddie pool, Shen managed to get him to the edge, but at the last moment he was thrown into the pool himself, losing the struggle. But then King Burt, the barbarian, came in from the runway, charging in with a spear, by God! Knocking Argon the Iron into the kiddie pool. The mistress was made utterly furious by this action and responds in kind by throwing Bert's plant son Gilbert into the pit, and hyper-aging Bert's husband Gillian to near death before throwing him into the kiddie pool as well. Yeah, we brought his whole family with us. That might not have been a great idea. Oh yeah, and our ranger, Div. She was the last one in, but less dramatically. In fact, she never got hit once and was long-range sniping at the mistress in Argon. So the mistress just teleported her over this pool of sand and she went off. And that's the story of my first TPK. I've been a Zamen and... Okay, fine, I lied. That was all staged and set up. It wasn't a kiddie pool of disintegrating sand. Instead, it was a pool of time sand. So we rejoin our heroes as they fall through the abyss of time. They fall endlessly, but they can still feel their bodies until eventually they stop falling, finding themselves amid streaks of light and stars. At the very least, the party is together. They can see one another. And in the distance, there are these two moving figures. One is this brilliant white diamond of light flying in a clean arc, while the second is a far-off moving black swirl that arcs through the darkness in an erratic pattern. The light reaches us first and speaks. Mortals, due to actions outside of your control, you have been thrust away from the perfect order of time. With this action, you shall cease to be, and the entire universe will soon collapse. To preserve this universe, heed my words. I am Coelthicus, sovereign of time's ebb and flow. Listen to my beck and follow. One moment. As he was speaking, the black swirl we saw earlier was fast approaching, to which Coelthicus turned around and slapped it away. That was the god of chaos seeking to destroy all of reality. Ignore him. I shall tell you what has transpired. Now Big G Coelthicus proceeded to explain what the hell just happened in that temple. As it turns out, the mistress thought killing us would be a bit too much of a hassle after we started fighting back against her. So she concocted an easier idea, erasing us from time by dunking us in time sand. That would make it so none of our characters ever existed and therefore no one would oppose her. And before you say that would create a new timeline or a branch universe or something multiverse, allow me to take you to school. Let me take you to Nick, the game's GM, his school of time travel. Alternate timeline? Forget about it. Branch timeline? Forget about it. Multiverse theory? I hardly know her. Do you remember Terminator 2? Think that time travel. In this world, there is only a single timeline. It's a recycled timeline. Things will always change. Time is ever flowing like a single river with no detours. It does not branch. You change something in the past, that change will affect your future. It will affect the world you live in and experience. So you got that? Good. Let's get back to the tale. Now, Coelthicus reveals that King Bert's husband and plant son aren't actually dead. They're here now. Coelthicus undid that because Nick, our wonderful GM, is a very nice guy. Definitely way too nice to us players. Definitely. Anyway, Coelthicus explains that the only way to stop ourselves from ceasing to exist is to anchor ourselves to time. To do this, Coelthicus will send us all through time, together, to a pivotal moment in each of our characters' histories. Now that Coelthicus had given us the rundown, he sent us on our way and chucks us through a time portal. We fall through the vortex and our stomachs flip about 17 times. Falling through, we all crash into a lush forest overlooking a teeny tiny village in these plains. It was weird, we couldn't get a sense of where we were. You see, the continent of Argonroad is centered around this big mountain, the eponymous Razorback Peak. Being able to see it lets you know where you are, but we couldn't even see it in the distance. As we look around to try and get our bearings and extract bile from our oral orifice, the druid, Eridan, realizes something. He recognizes this forest. It's where he was raised. But the village we see is much too small. Oh, and I should mention, each of us players look as if someone went into Photoshop and set our PNG's opacity to like 89%. All of us are kinda see-through. As we begin to explore, minor earthquakes begin to shake the land, and in the distance we can see people running and hear screaming. At that moment, Aridin realizes what today is. On this day, several hundred years ago. Oh yeah, Aridin's an elf, you should know that. On this day, Aridin had witnessed his father sacrifice himself to save the developing country of Arianord from, a Tarrasque. A gargantuan beast that we can see fast approaching from the horizon. Watching this beast grow ever larger as it approached, we notice that there seems to be a man in the village taking charge of the situation. A man Aridin recognizes, a man he hasn't seen in centuries. His father, the Earthbreaker. The Earthbreaker is doing his part to keep everyone under control and trying to evacuate them. He has an idea, something that might be able to stop the Tarrasque, but what he doesn't have is time. The Earthbreaker's brother is also present, and so is little tiny Aridin. The trio are debating what to do. The Earthbreaker needs someone to distract the Tarrasque, but he doesn't want to send his brother to go and do it because he needs someone to watch out for his son, little Aridin. That's when we step in, and our modern-day Aridin speaks up. "We'll do it," he says frankly, lying and saying that we're adventurers from a far-off land, trying to hide our identities. But that doesn't quite convince the Earthbreaker because... well, if a tornado was about to murk your home and you're trying to evacuate said home, would you really trust 6 weirdos who stumble out of the forest saying, "Don't worry broski, we'll slap that tornado silly"? So it takes a little extra convincing that was quite easy because Aridin brandishes his family's necklace, a rare one-of-a-kind item that originally belonged to his father. That brings things to a pause, but there is no further exchange of words. The Earthbreaker merely gives us a knowing nod while he goes up to prepare his ace in the hole. Baby Aridin is taken away by his uncle, and our baby, Gilbert, the plant son of King Bert, goes with him. Because bringing a small child to fight Godzilla on the front lines probably isn't the best idea, you know? We rush out to meet the Tarrasque head on, but compared to the Tarrasque, we are basically little mice, so it damn near crushes us all. So we begin our attack. Naturally, I as the cleric, Tempest cleric by the way, try to launch the first strike because round 1 is probably the only time I as the healer will get to launch an attack. So I charge up, go all ha, and fire off a lightning bolt, using the Tempest cleric class feature that allows me to maximize my damage roll, and fire off a clean 77 damage. Big number, right? Yeah, cause it was brutal. Crippling hit. Damn near killed him too. The bolt went zap and I was all like, ah! And the Tarrasque was all like, completely unharmed. Cause as it turns out, Tarrasques have this quirky little feature that lets them reflect magic right back at their attacker. So I, like a flying type that was just shot out of the sky, nearly did my max HP in one shot. That was fun. Thankfully we had a whole squad. Our monk flew up right at it, leaving a trail of fire behind him, and threw off some sunbolts, chucking a spirit bomb at him too. He was basically the equivalent of that one fly you can never swap. Our ranger fired off multiple arrows, which I think did something. The druid Aridin turned into a giant T-Rex with gorilla arms and nibbled at its ankles, trying to slow it down and somewhat succeeding. And our warlock, he launched fireballs at it and did actual damage because he had the pierce skill from SMT that lets him bypass the magic reflection. I, Surf, a cleric boy, eventually got up at some point and decided to focus on healing because, holy crap. But the sickest part though was King Bert. He roared into the sky and grew several times his size, getting to be around 30 feet. And well, a Tarrasque is about 50 feet, but he was able to tussle with it now, get real sumo with it, and even briefly overpower it. Until he started to get wrecked. Like, it was sick nasty. Couldn't even show it. They were exchanging haymakers. He tried to suplex it and nearly broke his spine in the process. And you are probably wondering how the hell he grew in size. Remember way earlier when I mentioned he had basically the Venom symbiote from Marvel? Yeah, it lets him do that. Climb on walls too, but it is super complicated. Just know that it's his sibling, alright? Moving on, we fought the Tarrasque and slowly started losing ground, but before things got too dire, the Earthbreaker returned in the form of a giant flaming gorilla, like way taller than the Tarrasque, ready to reenact Godzilla vs. King Kong, but like extra lit. Seeing this little storybook hero show up, the entire party proceeded to get out of his way. We moved and regrouped with Eridan's past little self and his uncle. From a distance, we witnessed an earth-shattering battle that changed the very landscape. The Earthbreaker wrestled and slugged it out with the Tarrasque, the whole thing being a damn close fight. And Eridan, along with at least half the party, not me, I, little small coward boy, wanted to go out and help the fight. But when we tried to get closer, this ethereal white barrier appeared before us, bearing the symbol of Quothicus. There, it became clear that while we had to alter time slightly to preserve ourselves, he would stand in our way if we tried to do anything that crossed his line. For a time, we sat back and watched. Eridan witnessed his father perish for a second time, as the Earthbreaker finally got the upper hand by pitting the Tarrasque to the ground with a pile driver. Then, like an earthbender, he crafted a mountain around himself and the Tarrasque to finally kill it, or at the very least seal it away, creating Razorback Peak, the mountain that gave the entire campaign its namesake. Having borne witness to this key moment, Eridan's opacity returned to 100%. He was officially anchored and no longer in danger of being erased from existence, because he had witnessed such a thing. As that occurs, little Eridan is behind us, sobbing over the death of his father, and to comfort him, Eridan exchanges some words of wisdom, and his past self is offered a hug by Plant Boy Gilbert. When this moment passes, a swirling portal appears. Quothicus is about to send us to someone else's history. And that's the only way to go. The first thing we had to do in this time travel arc was fight a freaking Tarrasque, so who the hell knew what was coming next? One by one, we all entered the portal until Bert and his son were the last ones. However, instead of entering, Gilbert stopped and looked at his father, saying, I want to stay. Coelth, whatever he is, he only cares about you guys. And looking at Eridan crying like that, I want to stay and help. I want to stay and help all of you. Please let me stay. It just means I'll get to see you guys later. After some back and forth, Bert is convinced to let his son stay behind. With that, the entire party fell through the stream of time, a sight none of us could ever hope to comprehend. Eventually it passed, and we finally came to under a clear blue sky, with heavy winds brushing past us, a weightless feeling overcoming us. Why, it felt like we were falling for hundreds of feet, and holy crap, we're falling! And that is where we shall leave off. I'll be sure to finish this story when part 2 rolls around in a bit. This game was my first ever full-length campaign, and the first time I ever truly played D&D. And the time slip arc is just what cemented it as something truly great. I am very excited to bring you the rest of the story next time. And if you're watching, Nick, sorry I couldn't cram the whole arc into this video. The last video I uploaded was half an hour long, and editing that was hell. But also, how the hell am I supposed to pace the video if we start the arc with a goddamn Tarrasque? Like what? Whatever I say next will just get overshadowed by it, both narratively and literally. Sorry. Still, I am very excited for the next part, and I truly do hope you enjoyed this video. I have been a Zamen, and if you don't hate my voice, then please consider sticking around, because my sole goal here is to improve my writing, editing, and speaking. Goodbye.